Forget CGI and padded insurance policies. Old Hollywood played with fire, real bullets, and a shocking disregard for personal safety. The golden era wasn't just glamorous. It was an all-out daredevil circus where survival was optional and lawsuits were just a rumor. Why did studios risk lives for a shot no one could fake? What if I told you some of your favorite classics are hiding stunts that would get any modern production shut down before the cameras rolled? Buckle up. Some legends were built on pure, reckless nerve. Submarine Escape and Squid Battle, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954. Think you've seen intense underwater action? 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea brought a whole new meaning to high stakes. In this 1954 Disney classic, the production team wasn't content with miniatures or studio tanks. They filmed elaborate underwater scenes off the coast of the Bahamas, putting cast and crew at the mercy of the ocean. Armed with vintage diving suits and minimal safety gear, divers and actors, including Kirk Douglas himself, spent hours submerged, wrestling currents, tangling with hoses, and sometimes losing communication altogether. The most infamous moment? The epic squid battle. No animatronic stand-ins here, just a massive practical model, unpredictable waves, and a mounting sense of panic whenever tentacles started wrapping a little too tightly. Every underwater shot was a potential disaster. Air hoses are tangled, divers got disoriented. More than once, a crew member was pulled to the surface on the brink of passing out. The cast even faced surprise encounters with wildlife, sharks, barracudas, you name it. Yet the footage they captured set new standards for realism, winning the Academy Award for Best Special Effects and launching a new era for underwater adventure films. Would any director risk this today? Not a chance. These days, safety divers, advanced gear, and CGI monsters make movie oceans a lot less treacherous. Back then, if something went wrong, you didn't get a do-over. You just hoped everyone made it back to the surface. 20,000 Leagues remains a textbook example of ambition, ingenuity, and a healthy disregard for personal safety. A combination Hollywood has since left at the bottom of the sea. Jungle River Rapids, The African Queen, 1951. It's one thing to stage a river adventure on a soundstage. It's another to throw your cast, crew, and cameras into the wild rapids of Uganda and the Belgian Congo and let nature call the shots. That's exactly what John Huston did with The African Queen in 1951, risking lives and sanity in pursuit of authenticity. While some of the deadliest rapids were recreated back in London, many scenes were shot on real, turbulent waters with actual boats and a minimal safety net. Stars Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn were famously game, performing in sweltering heat and battling both the current and the ever-present threat of disease. Legend has it the crew's biggest enemy wasn't wildlife, but dysentery. Hepburn herself suffered so badly she lost 20 pounds during production, and Huston and Bogart reportedly survived only by drinking whiskey instead of water. Stunt doubles and local boatmen braved the hairiest moments, but no one was truly safe. Boats capsized, cameras nearly drowned, and at least one outboard motor was lost to the river's wrath. The resulting footage, chaotic and raw, captured the wild unpredictability of real adventure, something no studio set could ever fake. Today, studios would balk at letting stars and stunt performers take these risks. Animal safety laws, water safety standards, and insurance requirements would drown the idea before anyone even left for Africa. But back then, the only thing thicker than the jungle mist was the crew's stubborn commitment to getting the shot, no matter the cost. Chariot Race Carnage, Ben-Hur, 1959. Want to see Hollywood's idea of go big or go home? Look no further than the chariot race in Ben-Hur, a sequence so massive and dangerous that it's still the stuff of legend. Shot at Cinecittà Studios in Rome, with a cast of dozens of real horses, and a quarter-mile racetrack built from scratch. This was not just a race, it was an organized riot. Director William Wyler's obsession with authenticity led to real chariots, no seatbelts, and a stunt team expected to keep up with stampeding horses. The chaos wasn't staged. Stuntmen flew off chariots, horses tangled, and injuries piled up. The most jaw-dropping moment? Stuntman Joe Knutt, doubling for Charlton Heston, was thrown from his chariot, skidding under the wheels, in a pulse-pounding accident that Wyler insisted on keeping in the final cut. Miraculously, Knutt walked away with just a cut chin, a stroke of luck no insurance policy could ever guarantee. Rumors swirled about fatalities, but the studio has always denied any deaths. What's not in doubt is the danger. The race remains one of the most intense, reckless spectacles ever captured on film, sparking fierce debates about on-set safety and animal welfare, debates that echo in Hollywood to this day. Today, this kind of Wild West chaos would get a production shut down. CGI reigns supreme, and for good reason. But the chariot race in Ben-Hur, it's a relic of a more dangerous, and let's admit it, more thrilling era. Horse Stampede, Red River, 1948. If there's a scene that truly captures the reckless bravado of old Hollywood, it's the cattle and horse stampede in Howard Hawks' Red River. Hundreds of real animals, wrangled by stuntmen with nerves of steel, thundering across the prairie and right past the camera crew, with no fences, no digital herding, and only the thinnest line of wranglers to keep chaos at bay. Hawks, always a champion of authenticity, wanted the stampede to feel as real and terrifying as possible. Stunt riders risked being trampled, thrown, or crushed if even a single horse panicked or veered off course. The plan was simple: open the corral gates, whip up the animals, and hope the stampede stuck to the path. The plan rarely went off without a hitch. Horses crashed into each other, cowboys were thrown from their saddles, and the dust cloud that followed left everyone coughing for days. No one suffered fatal injuries, but plenty of bruises, close calls, and a few busted ribs. The scene delivers an unfiltered wallop that today's audiences rarely experience, because today's filmmakers would never be allowed to try. Animal rights groups, safety coordinators, and insurance companies would all step in long before the first hoof hit the ground. Back in 1948, though, it was all about spectacle, whatever the cost. The Stampede in Red River remains a thundering, unforgettable tribute to the audacity of a bygone era when the show really did have to go on. Aerial crash landing, Hell's Angels, 1930. Want to know what happens when you give a billionaire director an open checkbook and a thirst for danger? You get Hell's Angels, the original hold my beer moment in movie history. Howard Hughes, not known for subtlety, wanted real dogfights and crash landings, so he hired real pilots, handed them a script, and basically told them to improvise with their lives on the line. Aerial sequences in Hell's Angels were as real as it gets. Planes soared, dove, and sometimes collided for the camera, all while pilots navigated dicey wind currents and temperamental engines. The most legendary stunt, a crash landing, was performed by stunt pilot Paul Mantz, who actually flipped his plane on purpose for a jaw-dropping final shot. No crash mats, no remote controls, just raw courage and the faint hope that the ground was softer than it looked. Hughes' obsession with realism nearly killed several of his pilots, and nearly himself when he insisted on flying for a scene and promptly crashed, suffering a skull fracture. The production racked up injuries, totaled aircraft, and even cost a couple of pilots their lives. Studio heads looked the other way, and moviegoers cheered the spectacle, blissfully unaware of the carnage that happened just out of frame. Today, every single frame would be replaced with digital planes, and insurance reps would barricade the runway. But in 1930, the sky wasn't the limit. It was just the next thing to conquer, no matter the cost. The Burning of Atlanta, Gone with the Wind, 1939. Think epic movie fire means a safe set and clever editing? Not in 1939. For Gone with the Wind's legendary Burning of Atlanta, the studio didn't rely on miniatures or visual effects. They set a real backlot on fire, and not just any fire. We're talking a wall of flames visible for miles, with heat so intense it melted camera equipment and sent the crew running. The production torched old sets, including remnants from King Kong and other films, to make Atlanta's destruction as jaw-dropping as possible. Hundreds of extras, horses, and stunt workers navigated collapsing buildings and clouds of smoke. The main escape scene, with Vivian Lee's stand-in careening past burning debris, was filmed in a single night, and only after weeks of safety drills that everyone secretly knew wouldn't matter if the wind changed or the fire spread too quickly. Stories from the set are almost as dramatic as the footage. Stuntmen's clothing catching fire, horses panicking, crew members dousing each other with wet towels to avoid burns. The studio went all in, betting that the spectacle would outshine the danger. Spoiler, they were right. The result is one of cinema's most iconic disaster scenes, still imitated, never equaled. If anyone proposed this today, they'd be escorted off the lot for endangering half of Hollywood. But back in the golden era, making history meant playing with fire and hoping you didn't get burned. Window jumps and clock dangling, safety last, 1923. If you think action heroes only came along with blockbusters, think again. Harold Lloyd, the king of silent comedy, practically invented the DIY death-defying stunt, and his most famous moment in Safety Last is still a jaw-dropper a century later. Yes, that's really Lloyd dangling from a clock face, 12 stories up, with nothing but a few mattresses far below to break his fall if something went wrong. Lloyd performed his own window jumps, building climbs, and dizzying high-wire acts with no digital tricks, no harness, and, legend has it, missing a thumb, thanks to an earlier stunt gone wrong. Production was as bare bones as it gets, a set constructed on a rooftop with clever angles, but real wind, real gravity, and a real risk of plummeting to his death if he slipped. The suspense on screen is the real deal. Crew members held their breath, audiences fainted in theaters, and Lloyd's fearless antics became legendary overnight. Insurance? Not really a thing. Safety consultants? Try wishful thinking. Try pitching this to a studio today, and you'll get nothing but laughter and a stern call from legal. But in the 1920s, movie magic meant risking everything for the perfect laugh, or gasp. Harold Lloyd's iconic clock stunt is a ticking reminder of just how far Hollywood's daredevils would go to make us believe. So, after all that, ask yourself, would you trade digital safety for the real, raw adrenaline of old Hollywood? Every bruise, burn, and near miss we've just uncovered is more than a stunt. It's a wild piece of film history, never to be repeated. Which of these legendary risks blew your mind the most? Drop your favorite in the comments, share the madness with a fellow movie buff, and smash subscribe if you want more behind-the-scenes stories no studio would dare attempt today. Remember, sometimes the biggest blockbusters were built on pure nerve. Would you survive a day on those sets? Horseback Cliff Fall and Stagecoach Slide, Stagecoach 1939. How much is a human life worth in Hollywood? In 1939, the answer was apparently, whatever a good take costs. Enter Yakima Canutt, the godfather of stunt work, who transformed the Western stagecoach into an adrenaline-charged death wish. Forget green screens or wire rigs, Canutt launched himself between a team of galloping horses, then slid underneath a thundering, fully loaded stagecoach in a single, unbroken shot. Director John Ford, famous for shooting until someone bled, insisted on long takes and real peril to keep audiences white-knuckled. No harnesses, no trick camera angles, just Canutt's homemade L-shaped stirrups, his split-second timing, and the very real chance of becoming a pancake beneath a wooden wheel. Crew members reportedly held their breath each time. Even Ford, who wasn't exactly known for nerves, had to look away once or twice. The result? Not just box office gold, but a new standard for on-screen action. Stagecoach launched John Wayne as a household name and put every future cowboy movie on notice. Risk sells. Canutt's stunt work was so revolutionary, the Academy later gave him a special Oscar, basically admitting that, yeah, this guy survived stuff nobody should have to. But here's the kicker. Even the toughest modern stunt coordinator wouldn't touch this setup with a 10-foot pole. No insurance policy in existence would cover a man sliding under a moving coach with horses on either side. It's a jaw-dropping slice of movie history, and a dare that remains legendary, precisely because nobody sane would try it again. Real arrows fired at actors. The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938. Would you trust your life to another man's aim, even if he called himself a champion? In 1938, the cast of The Adventures of Robin Hood didn't just act out danger, they stood directly in its path. Forget foam-tipped props and CGI arrows. When Robin Hood lost his arrows in those famous archery scenes, stunt archer Howard Hill shot the real thing, at real people. That's right, extras and even some named characters wore only thin wooden padding under their costumes, praying Hill's legendary aim wouldn't fail. Each arrow whistled just inches from flesh and bone. Hill earned a cash bonus for every bullseye, but the stakes were much, much higher than payday. Every morning, insurance agents reportedly haunted the set, sweating bullets at the thought of an accident. And why not? One wrong twitch, one misjudged angle, and a day's filming turns into a medical emergency. So why take the risk? Simple. Authenticity. These archery sequences set a new bar for swashbuckling spectacle. They turned Robin Hood into the template for every adventure film that followed, daring later productions to go bigger, faster, and riskier. Today, the very idea would spark lawsuits, safety walkouts, and enough paperwork to fill Sherwood Forest. But back then, it was just another day at work, if your job description included possible human target. It's the kind of movie magic that only happens when everyone's too busy making history to worry about living to see it. Burning bridge collapse. The bridge on the River Kwai, 1957. Some directors want a perfect shot. David Lean wanted a perfect explosion, one so real that, for a moment, even the jungle animals panicked. The bridge on the River Kwai is the stuff of cinema legend, not just for its story, but for its full-scale, no-cheating, blink and you'll miss it bridge detonation. How did they do it? Engineers spent months constructing an actual wooden bridge in the jungles of Ceylon, now Sri Lanka. Then, for one glorious, terrifying moment, Lean's crew wired it with live explosives and blew the whole thing to smithereens in a single take. The tension was so thick, local villagers reportedly thought a real disaster had struck when the boom echoed for miles. The crew drilled safety rehearsals like their lives depended on it, because they did. If anything failed, there were no do-overs, only disaster. Lean himself watched from a distant vantage point, nerves frayed to the breaking point. The practical effects crew became legends overnight, but not without scars. Film historian Kevin Brownlow later described the operation as one of the most hazardous set pieces ever filmed. And it shows. The footage is jaw-dropping, the kind of in-camera spectacle that modern blockbusters try and usually fail to fake. Would anyone be allowed to do this today? Not a chance. No studio would sign off, no government would give the permits, and no insurance company would come near. In 1957, though, movie magic meant living on the edge, and hoping the edge didn't blow up with you on it. Crocodile Pit Escape, Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. Welcome to the jungle, where the wildest thing isn't the animals, it's the insurance nightmare. MGM's Tarzan and His Mate didn't just flirt with danger, it stared it in the eye and dared it to blink first. Olympic gold medalist Johnny Weissmuller and co-star Maureen O'Sullivan performed their own stunts, often surrounded by living, breathing predators. But the scene that's still whispered about? The crocodile pit escape. The stars and their stunt doubles splashed, thrashed, and swam in pools that by all accounts included real crocodiles. Forget animatronics or digital stand-ins. These reptiles were the real deal. The production tried to keep barriers in place, but crocodiles aren't known for following scripts. There's a persistent legend that one croc broke free during filming, sending the set into chaos. Official records are murky, but the sense of risk is undeniable. Why gamble with lives? Simple. In Depression-era Hollywood, bigger meant better, and better often meant insanely dangerous. The film's wild stunts pulled in crowds eager to see something no other studio would dare. Today, you couldn't get within a mile of a movie set with that many live animals and that little safety gear. Animal rights, union rules, and common sense all say, not a chance. The crocodile pit scene stands as a reckless monument to a time when movie spectacle meant risking life and limb for a shot that left audiences gasping and studio lawyers hiding under their desks. Underwater Shark Attack, Thunderball 1965. If you think the Bond franchise is daring now, you haven't seen the madness behind Thunderball's underwater shark battle. Back in 1965, the Bahamas weren't just a glamorous backdrop. They were a literal shark tank, and the actors, divers, and stunt crew were all swimming in the deep end. Literally. The premise? Sean Connery's Bond battles sharks in a submerged death match. The reality? Real sharks, not mechanical props, share the water with the cast. The only protection? Plexiglass barriers that, let's be honest, offered more peace of mind than genuine safety. Rumor has it that, at one point, a shark slipped past the barrier, sending divers scrambling for the surface. Most of the high-risk moments fell to professional stunt divers, whose courage or insanity set a new bar for practical effects. Even so, the actors weren't completely off the hook. Connery himself did a few close-up shots with the ocean's most infamous predators just out of frame. The tension on set was so thick, you could practically taste the adrenaline. Technical challenges abounded, tangled gear, limited visibility, and the ever-present threat of a shark with stage fright. What did Hollywood learn? That sometimes pushing the envelope means risking lives for a few seconds of unforgettable footage. Thunderball's aquatic chaos stands as a cautionary tale, a jaw-dropping spectacle that modern safety officers would shut down faster than you can say, "Martini, shaken, not stirred." Today, the sharks would be digital, the risks reduced, and the legend, well, not nearly as jaw-snapping. Shark Tank Dive, Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954. Imagine putting on a rubber suit, diving into an alligator-infested spring, and holding your breath for nearly 3 minutes while playing a monster. Welcome to the wild workday of Rico Browning, the original gill man in Creature from the Black Lagoon. The 1954 creature feature classic didn't just raise the bar for underwater monster movies, it set a new high watermark for dangerous stunts that would send modern safety inspectors running for the exit. Filming at Wakulla Springs in Florida, Browning had to perform long, continuous takes, completely submerged, with no built-in air supply inside his heavy costume. Sometimes he'd surface gasping for breath, vision blurred by the mask, surrounded by the real-life threat of alligators and snakes. Oh, and did we mention some scenes required him to chase and attack swimmers while unable to see more than a foot in front of him? Co-star Julie Adams did some of her own swimming, but when it got risky, professional diver Ginger Stanley jumped in, literally. Every take was a gamble, as unpredictable wildlife and limited safety measures kept the entire crew on edge. The realism paid off. The movie became a cult classic and inspired decades of monster movie mayhem. But try this today? Not a chance. Between animal welfare regulations, actor safety, and OSHA paperwork, you'd need more permits than there were fish in that lagoon. The Gillman's watery feats remain a jaw-dropping reminder. Sometimes, movie magic comes at the cost of a little too much reality. Plane wing walk and low-level flybys. Only Angels Have Wings, 1939. How close would you let a real airplane fly over your head for a movie? For Howard Hawks' Only Angels Have Wings, the answer was close enough to feel the wind and duck for cover. Filmed in 1939, this high-flying drama didn't rely on rear projection trickery. Hawks wanted his daring pilots to soar, dip, and skim treetops for real. Stunt pilot Paul Mantz became a legend thanks to death-defying low-level flybys and intricate aerial maneuvers. Sometimes he'd thread the needle through narrow canyons, banking just feet above the jungle canopy. Crew members swore you could feel the air pressure shift as he roared past. The production was so intense that even seasoned actors Cary Grant and Jean Arthur were left awestruck, maybe even a little bit terrified, by the live-action chaos unfolding in front of them. Rumors floated that Mantz pushed boundaries, not just for the camera, but to outdo his own legendary reputation. Hawks, meanwhile, was infamous for pushing his team to the brink, always chasing that perfect, heart-stopping shot. The result? Cinematic gold, and a reputation that made Only Angels Have Wings a must-see for action fans. Today, there isn't a studio, pilot, or insurance company alive that would greenlight stunts this reckless. CGI and drones now rule the skies, but the film's breathtaking realism is a standing ovation for old-school guts, and a warning sign for anyone thinking of chasing those wings without a safety net. Sword fight on stairs. The Crimson Pirate, 1952. What's more dangerous than a sword fight? Try a sword fight on a staircase, without harnesses, mats, or the faintest whisper of modern safety protocols. That's exactly what audiences got in 1952's The Crimson Pirate, where Burt Lancaster, a former circus acrobat turned Hollywood star, insisted on doing his own stunts. The result? A breathtaking duel that left both cast and crew holding their breath. Alongside stunt partner Nick Cravat, Lancaster took to the massive staircase built specifically for the sequence. The duo's background in acrobatics let them leap, tumble, and fence with a kind of reckless elegance that made every take feel like it could be their last. The staircase itself became a third character, slick, steep, and completely unforgiving. Studio lore has it that insurance representatives tried to avoid the set on sword fight days. Crew members reportedly watched from behind their hands, half expecting disaster at any moment. But the chemistry and sheer bravado on display turned a simple fight scene into an iconic moment of swashbuckling cinema. The audience didn't just see a choreographed duel, they saw real danger, and it paid off with adrenaline-pumping realism. Would any studio let a big star do this today? Not a chance. With modern regulations, safety would take center stage. Lancaster's legendary duel stands as a monument to when raw nerve and circus training beat out risk assessments, something you'll never see again. Runaway Wagon Crash, The Big Country, 1958. In the wide-open wilds of The Big Country, the real star wasn't Gregory Peck or Gene Simmons. It was a full-sized runaway wagon, barreling downhill with live horses and real stunt riders hanging on for dear life. Director William Wyler, not one to shy away from spectacle, insisted the crash be filmed without tricks or scaled-down models. The sequence involved a heavy wooden wagon, a team of spirited horses, and legendary stuntmen like Chuck Hayward bracing themselves for chaos. There were no roll cages, seatbelts, or CGI safety nets, just raw skill, luck, and the knowledge that a single misstep could mean broken bones, or worse. Horses could spook, wagons could tip, and there was nothing but dust and adrenaline to soften the blow. Wyler's pursuit of realism was relentless. Crew stories suggest he pushed for take after take, chasing the perfect shot as the wagon crashed, tumbled, and, more than once, nearly took out half the stunt team. The danger was so real, even the hardiest cowboys on set admitted it was a ride they'd never want to repeat. You'll never see a scene like this in modern Hollywood. Today, every risk is calculated, every move double-checked, and every actor wrapped in bubble wrap. The big country's wagon crash is a dusty, bone-rattling relic, a perfect storm of bravado and skill that no health and safety officer would ever sign off on. Exploding train bridge, the train 1964. How do you make a train robbery truly unforgettable? In John Frankenheimer's The Train, you blow up a real bridge. And no, we're not talking about models or digital effects. For this 1964 thriller, the filmmakers got permission from French authorities to rig a full-sized railway bridge with explosives and crash a genuine locomotive through it, all in one white-knuckle take. The preparation was Herculean. Engineers coordinated timing, pyrotechnics experts set the charges, and everyone involved knew there would be no second chances. The bridge had to collapse precisely as the train crossed, a logistical nightmare that would give modern risk managers a heart attack. Reports from the set say even seasoned crew members stood in stunned silence as the bridge buckled and the train plummeted in real time. Actor Burt Lancaster, originally slated to be part of the sequence, was sidelined by injury, leaving the most hazardous moments to expert stunt professionals. Local officials watched in awe and a bit of panic, knowing such destruction would never be repeated, certainly not with real trains, real bridges, and zero digital backup. Today, the mere idea of demolishing public infrastructure for a movie would get you laughed out of the producer's office. The train's explosive set piece stands as a monument to a wilder era, when the line between cinematic spectacle and sheer madness was thin, blurry, and about to be blown sky high. Dune buggy flip, it's a mad, 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 mad world 1963. Forget sleek CGI car chases. It's a mad, 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 mad world redefined vehicular mayhem the old-fashioned way, with horsepower, guts, and a total disregard for the phrase safety first. In the 1963 ensemble comedy, one of the most jaw-dropping stunts comes courtesy of a dune buggy. No blue screens, no digital edits, just a wild airborne leap that was as risky as it was spectacular. The setup? A dune buggy, piloted by a professional stunt driver, rockets off a makeshift ramp, launches through the air, rolls and crashes in a glorious symphony of twisted metal. There's no foam padding, no hidden airbags, and no multiple takes. The pressure on the stunt team was immense. This had to be captured perfectly, in one shot, with every camera rolling. Miss the landing, and you risk more than just a busted vehicle. You're talking serious injury, or worse. Behind the scenes, the story goes that the driver himself wasn't even named in the credits. This was the era when anonymous daredevils risked everything for a few seconds of celluloid immortality. Decades later, fans still argue about who actually made the jump. But what's undeniable is the spectacle it delivered. The crash was so intense, some crew members actually turned away, convinced it would end in disaster. Today, no union or insurer would ever greenlight a stunt like this. The margin for error was razor thin, and the consequences were real. Modern audiences might take practical car stunts for granted, but in 1963, this was nothing short of reckless brilliance. It's the kind of over-the-top chaos you just don't see anymore, and maybe for good reason.